Previously, I briefly discussed the first temptation of JC, who is asked by the devil to turn stone into bread. JC resists this temptation by saying, "It is written," and makes the following proclamation: "Man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." This is a quote from Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3, where bread actually refers to the manna which God fed the people of Israel with for 40 years in the wilderness. He humbled you, causing you to hunger, and then feeding you with manna, which neither you nor your fathers had known, to teach you that man does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. But what the verse reveals is that it really wasn't the manna which fed them. It was the word which comes from the mouth of the Lord. Exodus chapter 16, verse 4. Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day."
The essence, the understanding from this is that JC in this statement, if he in fact made this statement as the New Testament records, and if the apostles heard him tell the story of when he was in the wilderness, this exchange went on, they would understand the meaning of his words, that man lives on every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. If you go through the law, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, what you will hear over and over again, and as I say, I hope I don't slaughter the Hebrew here, you will come across the phrase, Vayomer Adonai. And what it means is, Vayomer is and said, or and spoke, Adonai, the Lord. The Lord said, and then it will go on to say what the Lord was saying. We find this right in the very beginning of Torah. If we go to Genesis 1:1, it says, "In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. Now the earth was formless and void, formless and empty." Sorry, I think the King James was kicking in there. "Darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said," all right, this is God speaking. This is the word of God going out. "And God said, let there be light. And there was light. God saw the light was good and separated the light from the darkness." So this is the first instance in Torah that we hear the word proceeding from the mouth of God. And God said, let there be light. What happens when God said, let there be light? There was light. God called the light day, the darkness he called night, and there was evening and there was morning the first day. Verse 6. And God said, let there be an expanse between the waters to separate water from water. So what happened? God said. Every time you hear the word or the phrase God said, that's every word proceeding from the mouth of God. Man does not live on bread alone. He lives on every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Think about it. The very first word that was spoken was, let there be light. Aren't you glad right now that there's light? I'm pretty glad, because you wouldn't be able to see me. Without light, you wouldn't have the light reflecting on my face and being able to be captured by the sensor in the camera and being able to be recorded and then put up on YouTube and blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't be able to look outside my place today and look at the cove out here and the trees, and I wouldn't be able to not look in the mirror. Anyway, I just wouldn't be able to enjoy what is around me without the light that God created. The very first thing that he spoke, he created light. The second thing that he created was the expanse between the waters to separate water from water. So God made the expanse and separated water under the expanse and water above it, and it was so. God called the expanse sky, and there was evening, there was morning the second day. And God said, let the water under the sky be gathered to one place, and let the dry ground appear, and it was so. God called the dry ground land, and he gathered waters to the seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, I'm going to have to keep doing that. Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, and trees on the land that bear fruit and seed in it according to their various kinds, and it was so. Think about this for a moment, how powerful "and God said" is. J.C. says, quoting the law, quoting the Torah, that man lives on every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Without the word being spoken and these things being created, none of this would exist. Our very existence is wrapped up in "and God said." It's wrapped up in the word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Think how powerful that word is. Think how God making this one statement. God said, let the land produce vegetation. Look at the vegetation. Look at the seed-bearing plants and the trees on the land that bear fruit with the seed in it. It's around us everywhere. Now, I'm out in the country right now, so I get to appreciate a little more than maybe somebody living in the city. But I don't think that a person in the city is without imagination enough that they cannot imagine how much of the earth is in fact covered with vegetation of some sort or another. It doesn't have to be a big redwood tree. It can be just like a wee little tree. It doesn't matter whether it's a big plant or a small plant. It's all the result of God saying, God speaking and making this all happen. So imagine that God says this once. God says, let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants, etc., etc., and look at how that one phrase created all of the vegetation that we see here around us today. That from the beginning of time, from the time that God spoke until today, this is the reverberating response of creation to that commandment. That's how powerful the word that goes out from God is.